I'm here. I know, life can be loud, even when the room around you is completely quiet. There are nights when you're not alone, and yet you feel the weight of 100 miles between you and the person sitting right beside you. Tonight, we're talking about distance. Not the kind you measure in miles, but the kind that lives between two hearts. I've heard from sons who missed their fathers and fathers who tried and failed to be the men their children needed. Some never find the courage to speak about it. Others wait until it's too late. But the letter I'm holding tonight comes from a man who didn't wait until the last breath. It's not a plea for forgiveness, and it's not dressed in excuses. It's a confession, a quiet one, the kind you whisper to the dark, hoping someone, just one person, will hear. He calls it, "I was your father in name, but never in heart." If you've ever wondered whether love can survive without presence, or whether blood alone can bridge the gap between strangers, stay with me, because tonight we're going to walk through one man's regret, step by step, until we find the place where his voice finally breaks. Some. It's been over 30 years since the day I last held you. I'm writing this from a small room with a single window. The kind where the glass is a little warped, so the world outside looks bent, as if it's leaning away from me. There's an old radiator in the corner, clicking and hissing like it's trying to remind me I'm still alive. You probably don't remember my face from back then, and I can't blame you. When I left, you were just a boy with milk still on your breath and dreams I would never get to hear. I thought leaving would set me free. Instead, it built a cage no one could see. One I've carried inside me for decades. I remember the morning I left. Your mother was standing in the kitchen, her hands gripping the edge of the counter like she was holding the whole house steady. The sunlight caught her hair, but her eyes were already somewhere far away. You were in the living room stacking blocks into a crooked tower. When it tipped over, you laughed, and I thought, he'll be fine without me. Mrs. Carter, our neighbor, was outside watering her roses when I walked to the car. She didn't wave. She didn't have to. The look in her eyes told me she knew exactly what I was doing, and that I would regret it. The road out of town felt longer that morning, maybe because I kept looking in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see you running after me. But the street stayed empty, and the silence inside the car grew heavy, like an unwelcome passenger. I passed the old grocery store, the one where your mother and I used to buy penny candy on Fridays. The windows were still fogged from the morning chill, and for a second I almost turned back. Almost. But I didn't, because at 28, I thought freedom was worth more than fatherhood. In the years that followed, I told myself I was building a better life. I moved from town to town, job to job. Bartender in Savannah, night guard in a half-empty warehouse, driving trucks up and down the coast. There were faces, women whose names I sometimes forgot before the morning came, friends who were more like drinking partners than lifelines. And in every room I stayed in, there was always an empty chair, the kind meant for someone who would never arrive. Now looking back, I see it clearly. It wasn't freedom I'd been chasing. It was an escape from my own reflection. There was one friend who stayed longer than most. His name was Tom. We met hauling freight out of Charleston, sharing black coffee and chipped mugs and stories neither of us fully believed. Tom had 2 kids of his own. He carried their pictures in his wallet, creased and faded from years of opening and closing. Sometimes, late at night at the truck stop, he'd slide those photos across the table to me, and I'd look, longer than I should, at the way their little faces grinned at the camera. It was like staring at a life I'd walked away from, a life that kept on living without me. One night, after a run that kept us on the road for 14 hours straight, Tom asked me about you. I told him your name, that you liked building towers out of blocks, that you laughed when they fell. And then I stopped because I realized that was all I knew. Tom didn't say anything for a while. He just lit another cigarette, tapped the ash into a paper cup, and looked out at the dark highway. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "You still got time, man, unless you wait until you don't." I laughed it off that night, but his words have been chasing me ever since. I heard about your mother from time to time. Small-town news as a way of finding you even when you think you've outrun it. Mrs. Carter, the same neighbor who saw me leave, wrote me once. Just a short letter tucked in with a Christmas card. She said your mother was working double shifts at the diner, saving up for a better school for you, and that you'd started asking questions she didn't know how to answer. I read that letter 3 times. Then I folded it back up, put it in my glove box, and drove 200 miles without stopping. There was one night, must have been 4 years after I left, when I ended up back in town for a delivery. The diner lights were still on. I parked across the street, hands gripping the wheel so tight they ached. Through the window I saw your mother balancing plates on her arm, her hair pulled back the same way she used to when she cooked at home. And then I saw you. Sitting at the counter, your feet dangling off the stool, swinging back and forth. You were sipping a milkshake, eyes wide with the kind of joy I'd stopped believing in. I thought about walking in, about saying something, anything, but I stayed in the car. And when you turned your head toward the window, I ducked, like a coward. That night, I drove out of town before my shift was even done. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't leave a note. The highway was empty, but my head was crowded. Crowded with the sound of your feet swinging against that stool, with the shape of your smile when you thought no one was watching. I told myself it was better this way, that walking in after all those years would only tear the scab off wounds I'd left behind. But deep down, I knew it was me I was protecting, not you. You started visiting me in my dreams. Not the real you, not the grown man you are now, but the boy I left behind. In those dreams, you'd run ahead of me through a field of tall grass, laughing, calling my name like it belonged to you. And just when I was about to catch up, you'd disappear. I'd wake up with my chest tight, my hands reaching for something that was never there. The worst mornings were the ones where I could still smell the grass and hear your voice fading away. Those mornings stayed with me all day, and every mile I drove after, I carried them like unpaid debts. It was winter in Cleveland when my body finally caught up to my choices. I'd been hauling freight for weeks without a proper rest. One night, on a stretch of road slick with black ice, the truck skidded. I woke up in the hospital with a cracked rib, a stitched forehead, and a nurse telling me I was lucky to be alive. Lucky. That word tasted wrong. Because lying there, breathing through the sting in my chest, I realized there wasn't a single person to call. No one who'd sit by the bed and hold my hand until the pain passed. That was the night I stopped pretending freedom was enough. After the accident, I stayed in a cheap apartment above a laundromat, the kind of place where the walls hum from the dryers below and the hallway always smells faintly of detergent and cigarette smoke. That's where I met Ray, an old man with shaky hands who folded his laundry slower than anyone I'd ever seen. We started talking, mostly about the weather, or how the coffee from the vending machine tasted like burnt toast. One night, out of nowhere, he asked me if I had kids. I froze, and before I could think, I said yes and no. He didn't press me, just nodded, like he understood the kind of answer that can only come from regret. Ray had a way of talking about people as if they were still in the room with him. He told me about his daughter, how she used to send him postcards from every city she visited. The last one came 15 years ago. A picture of the Grand Canyon, with just 3 words on the back. I forgive you. When he said it, his voice cracked in a way that made my chest ache. I didn't ask what he'd done. I didn't need to. Some things don't require explanation, you just know. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering what it would feel like to hold a piece of paper from you, with those same 3 words. A few weeks later, Ray handed me an envelope, no stamp, no address, just my name, written in his trembling handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper. At the top he'd written, "Start now before you can't." Below that, nothing, just space. He said it was for me to write the first thing I'd want my son to hear from me. Not the excuses, not the stories, just the truth. I stared at that blank page for 3 days. When I finally picked up the pen, my hand shook so badly, I could barely write your name. The first line I wrote was simple. "Son, I was your father in name, but never in heart." And the moment the ink hit the page, my mind drifted back, not to the day I left, but to one of the few days I stayed. It was a Saturday in early spring. Your mother had thrown the windows open, letting in air that smelled like cut grass and rain. You were in the backyard, wearing a shirt too big for you, chasing a red ball that kept rolling away in the wind. I remember thinking, this is what people mean when they talk about home. Your laughter that day was the kind that made time feel slower. Your mother leaned on the doorway watching you, and for a second we caught each other's eyes, both smiling without saying a word. That moment lasted all of 5 seconds, and yet it's the one my memory holds onto the tightest. Not the fights, not the slammed doors, just that quiet, shared knowing that for a heartbeat, we were enough. It's cruel how the mind chooses the sweetest memory to follow you into your loneliest years. After that memory faded, I stared at the page again. The words came slower than I hoped, each one feeling heavier than the last. I started writing about the years I'd missed, your first day of school, the birthdays I wasn't there to light the candles, the scraped knees no one kissed better. I imagined them all because I didn't know them for real. And that was the sharpest cut of all, not knowing you, not having the right to claim a single memory that actually belonged to us. I started asking around, quietly, in places I thought your name might still echo. An old co-worker from the plant said he'd seen you at a hardware store, tall now, with a voice that carried across the aisles. Mrs. Carter told me you'd gone off to college, something with engineering. And a man at the gas station swore he'd watched you coach a kids' baseball team one summer evening. Every story was like a window cracked open just enough for me to catch a glimpse, never long enough to step through. I collected those pieces of you like a thief stealing from a life I'd already walked away from. It was late summer when I saw you with my own eyes. Not a photograph, not someone's story, you. There was a street fair downtown, the kind with food stalls, kids running with balloons, and music that drifts over the crowd like warm air. I'd gone there just to pass the time, or at least that's what I told myself. And then I heard your laugh. It cut through the noise, familiar in a way that made my chest tighten. I turned, and there you were, standing with a group of friends, a paper plate in one hand, telling a story like you'd been born to fill the air with words. For a moment, I forgot to breathe. I stood maybe 20 feet away, close enough to see the lines of your face, the way your eyes crinkled when you smiled, a mirror of your mother's. I thought about walking over, tapping your shoulder and saying the one thing I'd rehearsed for years, "I'm your father." But then I saw the ease in your posture, the way you belonged in that moment, and I realized that my presence might not fill a gap. It might create one. So I stayed where I was, let the crowd swallow me, watched you disappear into it just like you always had in my dreams. Chapter down. These days the mornings feel heavier. It takes me longer to sit up, longer to steady my breath. The doctor says it's my heart. Funny. It's been my heart all along, just not in the way he means. I keep the pills in a little plastic tray, each day of the week spelled out in neat black letters. Sometimes I wonder if I'll make it to the last one. Sometimes I'm not sure I care. But then I think of you, and that's enough to keep my hand reaching for the next dose. That's why I'm writing this now, because time doesn't feel like something I can count on anymore. I don't expect you to read it. I don't expect you to answer, and I sure as hell don't expect you to forgive me. But I need you to know, I've been there, in the shadows of your life, cheering quietly, hurting quietly, loving you quietly. And if this letter is all I can give you now, then I'll make sure every word carries the weight of all the ones I never said. I heard you bought a little house last year, white siding, blue shutters, and a porch just wide enough for 2 chairs. Mrs. Carter told me you painted it yourself, said she watched you out there on a Sunday afternoon, shirt sleeves rolled up, radio humming some old rock song. She said you looked happy. And even though I had no part in building that life, a piece of me swelled with pride. Like maybe, just maybe, you'd found the steadiness I never gave you. A man at the post office once told me he saw you help a stranger fix a flat tire in the rain. He said you didn't hesitate, didn't care that your clothes were getting soaked, just kept working until the job was done. That sounded like the kind of man I'd always wanted to be, but never quite managed to become. It's strange to feel pride and shame in the same breath. Pride because of who you are. Shame because I can't take any credit for it. Maybe that's the punishment I earned. And gently lately, the nights have been longer than the days. Sleep comes in short bursts, like it's afraid to stay too long. The nurse at the clinic tells me I should start getting my affairs in order. I nod like I understand, but truth is, my affairs fit into one small box under the bed. Inside, there's an old watch I bought when you were born. Never wore it much. I kept telling myself I'd give it to you when the time was right. Guess I waited too long for that. It still ticks, even if the man who bought it is running out of time. I've been thinking of leaving it for you, not as some grand gesture, but as proof that you were always in my thoughts. There's also a small savings account, nothing big, just enough to maybe fix the porch swing on your house, or buy a new glove for one of those kids you coach. I know money can't buy the years I missed. It can't buy the bedtime stories I didn't read, or the rides to school I never gave, but it's something, and something is all I have left to offer. The rest you'll have to take from these words. I've told myself 1,000 different versions of why I left. Some sounded noble, some just pathetic. But the truth, the one I never spoke out loud, is that I was scared. Scared I'd fail as a husband, scared I'd fail as a father. And instead of staying and risking that, I ran. I thought leaving would spare you from seeing me fall short, but all it did was guarantee that I would, in the worst way possible. That's the thing about fear. It doesn't protect you, it just changes the shape of the damage you cause. If I could go back, I wouldn't choose the braver road, I'd choose the slower one. The road where I stayed in that small house, where the bills piled up, where we fought sometimes but still sat down to dinner together. The road where I learned your laugh by heart, instead of chasing strangers' voices across state lines. Regret is a long road, son, and I've walked it every day since I left. I don't want you to walk it too. So if there's someone in your life right now, hold on. Stay, even when it's hard. By the time you read this, if you ever do, I may already be gone. But I want you to know I never stopped looking for you in the world around me. In the laugh of a boy running down a street, in the way a young man leans forward when he listens, like what you have to say matters. You've been my shadow companion, even when I had no right to walk beside you. And I hope, in some small way, I was yours too. That hope has been my lifeline. So this is my goodbye, not with the weight of a door slamming shut, but with the quiet of a porch light left on, just in case. I hope you've built a life filled with the kind of love that doesn't flinch when the hard days come, the kind that stays. If you can't forgive me, I understand, but if you can, even a little, let that forgiveness be a gift you give yourself. Not for me, for you. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, know this. I have always been and will always be proud to call you my son. Sometimes a letter isn't about asking for forgiveness. It's about finally speaking the truth, even if it arrives too late. Tonight's words were heavy, but maybe, somewhere in them, you found a reminder to say what needs saying while there's still time to say it. If this story touched you, hold on to that feeling. Let it move you closer to the people who matter in your life. And if you're carrying your own regrets, know that you're not alone. Thank you for sitting with me tonight, for listening all the way through. It means more than I can put into words. I'll be here in the quiet, waiting to share the next letter with you. Until then, take care of yourself, and I hope we meet again right here in the next story.